I'm kind of having trouble with my internet. It keeps cutting in and out on me. Um, I was going to post something about this series of protests about the pipeline going through Western Canada. Uh, Protest by people who think that um, this pipeline shouldn't go through. Um, One of my friends wants to remind you of a song called Woodstock by Joni Mitchell from about, I don't know, 1970, um, about the big music festival in Woodstock, New York. And hippies, marijuana, and people getting naked and going and playing in mud puddles. Why? Well, they just seemed way happier. Um, People who protest um, what's going on in British Columbia apparently are generating a lot of animosity. But the protesters in British Columbia feel like they have animosity because, well, it's really weird because, well, no one can explain Canadian history too well in 2 minutes, but it's a long history between the Indigenous people and the Canadian government, which is really um, unresponsive to the Canadian people in general. Is Canada a failed state? Pretty close to a failed state. And, it's propped up by bribes to politicians by huge capitalist corporations. Who's happy? Well, if you live in a big city, you're not happy because you still have to pay your rent, which means you have to go to work. And if someone's stopped you from getting to work, it means you don't get paid, which means you can't pay the rent. And then someone says, well, this is the way the protesters feel like in British Columbia. So what good is this done? Maybe we're going to have a revolution in Canada. That's the best thing that could happen. And what is that? Well, there's sticky situations, revolutions. I mean, if you're going to throw out the Canadian system, which I'm all for because it's a grand failure, it's just very tricky knowing what to do because you still, it snows in Canada and you still need your roads plowed so, you can get anywhere. Um, Canada is set up to fail as a nation because it's a winter country at least half of the year, and then it takes 5 months to grow anything. So there's food in the fall in Canada. The rest of the year you have to um, either, well, pretty much you have to import the food from places that are very far south, and which makes the food very expensive. And um, you know, what should happen in Canada? In Canada, um, Canadians should have giant greenhouses to grow their own food in each community rather than importing food from way south. But it doesn't happen because enormous corporations and rich people own all the land and or control the land by a crazy legal system that only they can run because the legal system is um, too expensive for the average Joe to manipulate around. And that's why it's a failed state, because for 99% of the Canadians, the system, if it works at all, the people are incredibly unhappy when they get home after a hard day's work, because then They look at their paycheck and the government's taken a huge whack off of it, and then they go to Walmart to buy something, and then the government takes another huge whack off of, um, it's endless taxation, high prices, and very poor wages. So as for the protesters in British Columbia, they're really protesting to the wrong people. They're protesting to the Canadian public who have no power. They really don't. I mean, what do the protesters want the Canadian population to do? There's nothing they can do. They can't go and get the politicians to act, because the politicians don't act in any country of the world. They're totally beholden to the rich and the corporate world, which are the rich. So, blockading roads so that people can't get to work, and, unless you're trying to get a 1917 Russian style revolution, which I'm all for, it's just very tricky to do it in February when the world of Canada is full of snow, and you need someone to plow the streets, and you'll need your imported food to get across the American border into Canada. So it's not a good time to have a revolution in Canada. And telling the Canadian people, support us, and well, fine, we'll support you or not. It doesn't matter to us, basically, because I think Canadians in general prefer that the natural environment remain natural. Canadians in general don't like oil pipelines because they're terribly afraid of oil spills, terribly afraid. And unfortunately, it's a very cold country, and Canadians have to use gasoline-powered cars because electric cars won't run when it's 30 below. And Canadians have got to generate a lot of foreign exchange because they have to buy a lot of food from other countries while it's winter in Canada. So Canadians have got to go to work. So if you're a protester and you're telling Canadians, I'm going to stop you from going to work, it means Canadians are not going to generate any money to buy food, which means they're going to starve. So if you think that getting sympathy from Canadians is by blockading them from going to work, I don't think it's a good idea. No, I mean, people already had sympathy, and by making them crazy, I don't think it's a good idea. And it's just not a good idea. What should happen if you're concerned about pipelines? Well, the particular pipeline that's being protested is a liquid natural gas pipeline. So liquid natural gas, I mean, if it spills, it's going to deliquefy, and it's just going to go up in the air and blow away. It's not like heavy crude oil. So this pipeline is not a dangerous pipeline. There is another pipeline through Western Canada that has heavy crude, and it's going to Vancouver, where it's loading onto super tankers to be exported. This is a bad situation. This is the one that should be shut down. But this one isn't. It's being protested by people, but it's not really the major news story right now. I mean, people don't want this stuff in Vancouver, but it's and in the end, we still need food from foreign exchange, and we still need gasoline and diesel fuel to move the food to us in the Great White North. Canada legalized weed, and I think the best thing protesters could do is encourage Canadians to smoke more weed rather than to blockade them from going to work. One man's opinion.